Hello, beautiful people. My name is Julia, and this is episode number 2 of the Confessional. In my first episode, I had spoken a little bit about my interest in Tantra and moving that energy, that life force through our body, why that's something that can be beneficial to do on a regular basis, and why that's something beneficial to know. Um, However, this episode and the idea behind the confessional in general is more about having an opportunity and a space to tell our stories. Say those things that we've been holding on to that we feel maybe like ashamed or guilty to admit to ourselves and others. In creating this podcast, I really just wanted to give people the opportunity to know what it's like to either hear the stories from others or to perhaps even express them themselves, of just experiencing that transformation that can come from letting go of the judgments and burdens that we sometimes carry without even recognizing it, without realizing what it actually does to our body, to our system, to those around us. So my dream is to just really give people the opportunity and the space to express, to be free, to tell their story, because I know from my own experience that there is a certain level of development and growth, but more specifically self-love, that comes from sharing our story with other people, from just really showing up and saying, hey, you know what? This is me. This is my life. This is what I've been through. And I'm not going to let that slow me down. I'm not going to let that define me. I'm not going to let this thing that happened in my life be the thing that I identify with anymore. And to transcend and to feel empowered by our own stories, I think is such a beautiful experience and thing that everyone should have, in my opinion. So thank you for just taking the time to sit with me and to listen to all of the beauty and messiness that sometimes comes in our own lives, these struggles, these obstacles, these challenges that we come up against, yet still find a way to grow through that, transform through that, assist other people in overcoming those same challenges. So, this episode of The Confessional is a very real and fairly edgy story for me to just express. I'm even feeling a bit nervous just saying this video, because even though this is a truth that I have told to some people before, it is not a truth that I have expressed on a larger scale to people before. So this is me releasing that burden, telling my truth, telling my story, feeling empowered as a result of it, and just really expressing how and why it is so beneficial and necessary for this work to be done. So, okay, just gonna take a moment, and now that I've said my brief introduction, just take a moment and connect with my own heart space, because I really want this message to come from the heart, and it's not something that I've really prepared beforehand. It's not something that I've really connected with what exactly I'm going to say. But I know it's something that I want to say and that I want to share and that I want to let go of. So just taking that moment to connect with my own breath, connect with my own heart, the love that I have for myself for showing up here today and creating this video that I have been putting off and creating for quite some time. Um, so, spoiler alert, a little over 2 years ago, I had an abortion. And for the longest time, I felt like this was something that I could not share with other people. There was like a certain level of guilt and shame that I had around that. And at the time, I didn't really feel that guilt. I didn't feel that shame. I was sort of disconnected from that. Um, but I didn't know how much it was actually festering in my body, in my own life. I didn't know how staying hidden and keeping this secret from other people, or feeling like this was a secret that I had to keep from other people, I didn't realize how that was actually affecting my own life. So I guess a bit of a backstory. I grew up in a family that, while very loving, very like nurturing, very affectionate in a lot of ways, I learned that it wasn't okay to share everything with people. I mean, it's hard for me to specifically say if this was something that I learned from society, from my babysitter, from my family, from like where specifically I created this idea. But I saw from those around me, and I specifically am having the image of my grandmother come to mind, but that there were certain things that we just didn't share with other people. There were certain truths that it was better to keep hidden, to keep away from like the neighbors. You know, if something bad happened to you, that you don't want other people to find out because they might judge you, they might look down on you, they might have these beliefs about you that you just don't want them to know. It may in some way change the way they interact with you. And so I grew up firmly believing that it was better for me not to share my life with other people, whether that showed up in terms of my emotional state, whether that showed up in terms of me actually expressing my truth, sharing what was on my mind, my interests, my passions. I just had this feeling of being like withheld, sort of shrinking down, holding myself back so that I could feel safer, that I could feel more protected, that I could feel, I mean, it was really just a level of comfort, because even now, what I know of this, the expansion process does feel very uncomfortable. And especially growing up, I just had this desire, as we all do on some level, to maintain a feeling of comfort. So, in my life at that time, growing up, for me, finding that comfort came from just shrinking down, being small, feeling, just creating like an element of being hidden. You know, don't show my cards, keep that air of mystery about me. And what that resulted in a lot of ways, was me not fully showing up in the world, keeping myself hidden from other people, you know, keeping the things that I had judged myself for hidden from other people, so that they, have this idea of me being like the star student, saw me in a very like positive life. But on the other hand, I had all of these self-judgments because I knew that I wasn't showing up authentically. I wasn't showing up in the way that I truly saw myself, because I was only letting people see the light side. I wasn't letting people see the dark side, my shadow self, all these aspects of myself that I didn't like, didn't agree with. Felt that if anyone knew this about me, that they wouldn't love me, they wouldn't like me, they wouldn't want to be like in my friend group, they wouldn't want to interact with me on some level, because this is what I learned. This is what I was taught. There was this aspect of like shame around the things that I judged myself as having done wrong. And I mean, a large aspect of that, I'm just thinking now, also could have come from the religion that I was a part of, and just like going to church every Sunday and having that constant reminder of cleansing your sins and confessing them. So at the time, I honestly was not of the mindset of wanting to fully reveal myself, didn't fully understand what the benefits of that could have been. But understanding now, after having gone through these processes and releasing some of my own judgments, just how freeing it actually can be to confess the things, not even that I necessarily did wrong, because that in and of itself is a judgment, but just to lean into what it is that I don't agree with, to reveal that to the world and show up in a way that I can still shine light on myself and on those parts of myself, because I know that they are not truly me. I know that they are not at my core. That is not who I am. That may be a thing that I have done, but that is not me at my core. And when I show up and express that and say that, then I am transcending those judgments. I am transcending that belief. I am allowing myself the space to create a new identity, because I am now letting go of this story that I created around who it is that I am. I am not a person who should feel judged or ashamed or guilty because I had an abortion, but this is something that is going to inspire me to step out into the world, to speak my truth more, and to encourage other people to do the same, because I now know the power of telling our stories, the self-love that can come from telling our stories. And what I truly desire is to show up powerfully in the world and to make a difference. And I recognized that over the past, say, 5 years, I've had this desire to show up and just like fully shine my own light in the world. But then I kept pulling myself back, hiding myself, because of these behaviors and things that I had done in the past that I had not yet forgiven myself for. And the judgments that I had for myself, the shame that I felt, stopped me from fully showing up, because I was afraid that, these people are going to find out that I'm an imposter. These people are going to find out about my past. These people are going to recognize that I am not fully living the life that I want to be living or that I am preaching. But what I recognized was that for me, this process of showing up and being imperfect and just doing my best and admitting that sometimes I just don't know what the fuck I am doing, and that is okay. That process is where the growth and the light and the development come from. And so I don't have to have everything perfect right now. in order to show up powerfully and make a difference in the world. I don't have to have everything figured out, because it is the journey that I am going through. And the journey is where I am going to find the most growth, where I am going to find the most loving aspects of myself, where I'm going to develop that level of forgiveness for myself and connect with my true essence. Because I know that the things that I have done in the past are not who I am. And that's okay. So I can let that go now, and I can choose to step forward fully and completely as the person that I am and as the person that I came here to be. When I first had this idea in my mind of wanting to show up powerfully, wanting to make a difference in the world, I kept coming up against this wall, and I couldn't quite figure out why. Like, why can I not just tell my truth? Why can I not just teach the classes and the lessons and say the things that I want to say? Like, what is it that's really holding me back from showing up as powerfully as I know I can? And it was because I was afraid to share my shame, share those self-judgments, and heal the beliefs that I had about myself. I was afraid to really face what it was that was holding me back. I was afraid to admit that I felt like I had like a deep, dark past, or these shadow elements of myself that I just didn't want people to see. And I was afraid that if people saw that they wouldn't want to follow this journey. They wouldn't want to find that light for themselves. But I think now I've recognized that it is really the growth and the transformation that we go through that makes a person worthy of following. If I just woke up one day and had everything together and didn't go through any challenges, any struggles, didn't overcome any obstacles, then why would anyone be interested in that? Why would anyone even care to listen to that experience? What I really wanted to share and to gain from this experience was knowing what it felt like to create that safe space, knowing what it felt like to have a place where I could fully show up and be myself, and even just coming to terms with this is who I am, this is what I have done, this is an aspect of myself that I may have judged in the past, but that's not who I am, and that's not how I choose to show up in the world anymore. Because I truly believe that loving and accepting the parts of myself that I once judged, and that is where my power comes from. That is where my self-love and my growth and my ability to show up for other people comes from. When I started out on my journey of expressing who I really was, releasing the shame and guilt that I have felt in my life, it felt really edgy. First, I just told like some people that were close to me, then I ended up telling like my parents, and just like sort of branched out slowly, which was a really big step for me in a lot of ways, because my friends, my family, they were always the ones who seemed to know. They would be the ones to find out like last. It's like the closest people that there were to me tended to be the people that I told last about something that I did feel shame or guilt around. And there was this fear that I would just like break this illusion that they had of me if I truly revealed my faults. But it's funny because the more I learned about other people's faults, the more I learned about the challenges other people have overcome, the more I learned ah, how empowering it is to share a story, the more connected I felt with those individuals, the more empowered I felt to share my own story. Each baby step that I took to reveal something deeper about myself, the more I realized that these are actually just stories. This is actually just this idea that I created in my head that this is like a bad thing. It's not a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's just a thing. And it's a thing that I did. It's a thing that happened. But that doesn't make me a good or bad person. How I show up in the world because of that is the most important thing. Again, it's still not about being good or bad because those are judgments, but how am I going to treat this thing that happened moving forward? How am I going to take that next step? What is the way that I want to show up powerfully in the world because of this? And even though there was this aspect of me that just wanted to let it all out, just let it all go, just say, hey, this is what I did, but this is not who I am. There was still that part of me that was falling into those old patterns, falling into those old judgments. There was this part of me that still wanted to stay hidden, that didn't want to make this video, that wanted to be small. And there was this voice in the back of my head that kept telling me that I don't have to tell people this. Like, it's okay. I don't have to share this with people. This isn't something that I need everyone to know. Because it's not about them. It's my life. I can keep it as hidden as I want to. And so I continued to keep it as hidden as I wanted to. However, what I discovered and realized is that it still kept festering. That I still wasn't showing up as authentically and as vulnerably as I could, and that these things were still very valuable to me in my life. And so even though there was this narrative in my head that I don't have to tell people this, I don't have to show up in this way, it's none of their business what I do with my life. But I knew on a deeper level that I wasn't living my full potential by keeping myself hidden in this way. And the more I held on to this belief that I don't have to share my life with other people, the more I felt myself sink, close in, be small, act in a way that was not aligned with my true values. because I wanted to continue to take that next step. But in an essence, I was just standing still. I was lying to myself that it wasn't as important to me, even though I knew on a deeper level that this truth needs to come out. And not even for everyone else, but just for myself. So that I can realize and recognize how much love I can still have for myself, regardless of what I've experienced in my life, regardless of what has happened to me, what I may have done to other people. It really is just connecting with that self-love, that self-forgiveness. The thing that I would say really helped to push me forward was recognizing and learning from other people who have shared their own stories, and learning and recognizing those who have not. I love learning about how traumas and emotions are stored in the body. A lot of people that I've talked to in life seem to have this belief, and I know this because I was once one of them, but just have this belief that they either don't have emotions or that they don't hold on to things, that they are happy and healthy. And again, I say this with a smile because I've been there. I have been in that place. I have in many ways lied to myself about where I actually was in my development. And I can't speak for you. I can't say what is true for you. But what is true for me is that I was living in denial. I was living in a place of not fully seeing my ego, not fully being and expressing the true me. So in doing this research, I began to see this pattern and this connection between those who have experienced this trauma, this God. Okay, so I'm definitely a burper. And burping for me is one of those like beautiful ways of releasing energy. So sometimes people can release energy through crying, through yelling, through like farting or burping. And for the longest time, I used to hold in my burps, and it was like the most uncomfortable thing, A, for my digestive system, and B, just for like my body and emotional state in general. So now I just fully embrace like, fuck yeah, I'm just gonna like let out this big burp because I know that I'm gonna feel amazing afterwards, and that's all that really matters. So for any of you people out there that feel like you have to hold in your gas, just let it out. Trust me, you'll feel so much better on so many levels. That's all I have to say about that. Okay, so moving forward. I began to research and talk to and hear from these people who had experienced these traumas in their life. And it wasn't until they had experienced some kind of illness, some kind of disease, some kind of sickness, or something in their life, like a pain or whatever, that they then went back and spoke of these traumas that they had experienced. So there are a number of people that I know who have had cancer, for example, had some kind of a illness or trauma, a lifelong disease. And while I can't say that everyone that I've spoken to has experienced this, I have noticed a correlation between those that have expressed these challenges and this aspect of their journey with me, that those individuals also had this deeper shame or guilt or story that they were keeping hidden from the world. That there was this secret that they felt they could not share with other people. And the more I heard of these people and these stories and these traumas that they had experienced and this guilt and shame that they were holding on to, the more I started to see and even recognize within myself how that was manifesting as physical ailments. The more I recognized how this was manifesting as a physical detriment to this person's life. And I really think that it was this aspect for myself that caused me to fully step into action and be like, you know what? I just have to start speaking about these things that I have gone through, these experiences that I have had, because I know that if I do not move this energy from my body, that it will get stuck and it will manifest in some other way as some other form of illness. And I know this for a fact to be true for me. Maybe not for you. Maybe not for Joe Blow down the street. But from what I've experienced and the guilt that I have felt, the shame that I have felt, that experience of feeling like I have to hide from the world, has really helped me to become aware of the energy that I carry. How letting go of these stories, this belief, this judgment, how more fully I can show up in the world, how more authentically, how much deeper I can build connections with people because I no longer feel like I have to hide anything. I can just be me, show up in the way that I want to. And not only that, but I develop a greater level of interest in other people as well, because I'm not afraid to have that reciprocated. I'm not afraid to be asked those questions that some people just, and myself, that I just at one point in my life didn't want to answer. You know, if people would ask me a question, I was very skilled at diverting the attention back to that other person, or not even just like choosing not to fully develop a deeper connection and relationship with that person because I wanted to stay hidden. And this showed up in pretty much all of my relationships. It caused me to keep my friends at a distance, keep my family at a distance, keep like the relationships that I had very closed off short term, that I wasn't able to build that depth that I truly wanted, that connection that I truly wanted. And it just wasn't until I decided to step into that growth, face that fear, challenge that belief that if people find out about my shadow, then they're not going to love me. But you know what? Fuck it. It doesn't come down to what other people think about me. It comes down to what I think about myself. And the more that I stay hidden and shrink down, the more like terrible I feel about myself because I know that I have a greater potential. So if you have learned anything from this story today, I want to take a moment to recap because I think that this is very important. In telling our own stories, not only do we develop a greater level of love, self-respect, trust, and integrity for ourselves, we stop caring so much about what other people think of us. We show up in a more powerful way. We take bolder action. We can then admit to ourselves what it is that we actually want out of life, what it is that we want to say, what it is that we want to do. We begin to create that shift for other people. To say, you are not your past. You are not your traumas. You are not what has happened to you in your life. There is nothing you have done and that has been done to you that cannot be forgiven. And that forgiveness isn't just a gift for that other person. That most importantly, it is a gift for you so that you can show up more powerfully in life, so that you can live the life that you want to live. Because when we hold on to that anger, those resentments, those judgments of ourselves or others, we are blocking that light from shining through. We are blocking that love from fully being expressed. And that is such a damn shame. When I think back now to my grandmother and this belief that she had about just wanting to keep so much of her life hidden. I think of this extraordinary woman, and after she passed, I started to learn about some of her past, some of the extraordinary feats that she had experienced, some of the ways that she was just such a warrior and such a goddess in her own right. But I never saw that side of her when she was alive because I didn't hear those stories. I didn't see her from that light because that wasn't something that she wanted other people to know at that time. That wasn't something that she felt comfortable sharing with other people. And I think that especially as women, we sometimes hold on to this idea that we have to look a certain way. We have to be perceived a certain way. But having heard these stories of my grandmother and just the ways that she would show up so powerfully in her own life has honestly been such an inspiration for me to overcome my own barriers, to overcome my own fears, to speak with passion and live my life with purpose. Because that's what we're here for, isn't it? We're not here to just play small, to stay hidden. We're here to shine light, to be all that we can really be. I can't force anyone to express something that they're not really willing or ready to express. That is a journey that needs to be taken when you are ready. It was a journey that needed to be taken only when I was ready. A truth that could only be expressed when I was ready. And what I recognized for myself, that time of ready came when I realized just how much I was holding myself back. It came when I finally admitted to myself what I wanted to achieve in this lifetime, what I wanted to experience in this lifetime. When I fully admitted to myself how much I want to be helping and serving other people, but that I wasn't doing that. And the pain from holding myself back became greater than the fear of stepping forward, of fully showing up, of showing what is possible. I know that it can sometimes be very edgy, very scary to express our fears, express our shadows, express the traumas and pain that we have experienced. But it is just such a valuable practice that I encourage you in some way, shape, or form to challenge yourself, to share in some way an experience that you've had, a secret that you're holding on to, just to see what happens, just to see if the energy shifts. There's this, call it a phenomenon that Brene Brown speaks of called a vulnerability hangover, that when we share with someone something that's really vulnerable to us the next day, or perhaps a few hours later, we'll experience these like sensations and this feeling of like, oh my God, did I just do that? Like, I envision it almost like a sense of embarrassment as we wonder to ourselves, how is this person going to perceive this information? How is this person going to think of me? How is this person going to just react to this information that I have shared with them? Coming from my own practices as a coach, I've recognized that if I am not experiencing that vulnerability hangover, then I'm not sharing deeply enough. I'm not showing up as powerfully as I could be. And if I'm not showing up as powerfully as I could be, then I am not creating the kind of impact that I want to in the world. Because mark my words, no one on this planet is perfect. No one on this planet has come through without making some kind of mistake, without feeling some kind of guilt or shame, without doing something that they needed to forgive someone else for or be forgiven for. It's not about everything that we can do right. It's about what we can do wrong and show up anyway. Are we still willing to take that next step? Take that next leap? Step into the spotlight and say, hey, this is still me. I'm still here and I'm still shining brightly. It's that act of self-love. That I'm not doing this for you. You may benefit from it. But these words, this truth, I am speaking for myself. And on a greater level, that's all that really matters. Because if I can love myself fully and completely, then absolutely you will benefit as a result. Thank you. beautiful people, for showing up here today, for stepping into your own edge, speaking your own truth, for recognizing the empowerment that comes from showing up even when we don't want to. For recognizing the empowerment that comes from facing our fears, and loving ourselves even when we don't want to. How are you going to express yourself today? How are you going to show up powerfully today? What truth are you going to let go of? How are you going to forgive yourself today? Confession, in order to be properly executed, must be in front of at least one other person. I know that forgiveness is always available, and that there's always someone out there willing to hear your story, someone out there who will benefit from your story. So don't act small. Don't hide. Just be who you are and accept the love that comes as a result of that. My name is Julia Warner, and this is episode 2 of the Confessional. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being who you are. Stay tuned for the next episode. And until then, be well, be light, and keep shining. Thank you, and God bless.